Hello friends, so welcome to this new class and we are here to deal with last chapter of this subject economics. So we shall see the last chapter, that is chapter number 5, and it is about consumer rights, the rights of the consumers. You know, in one way or another, all are consumers. Even those who are producing things, they also need to be consumers, because all the things that we need, one cannot produce. We may be able to produce certain things, but the rest we will have to depend on the market, we will have to depend on the producers. So when we are buying things from the market, we are consumers and we have certain rights, because we are paying money and buying the things. Therefore the manufacturer cannot say this is only thing, if you want you buy. No, once you decide to buy, then it is attached with a certain rights and you can claim for that. That is what we are going to learn. What are our rights with regard to the purchasing that we do in our daily life, the consumption that we do in our daily life, the things that we use in our daily life, what are our obligations, what are our rights, and so on. Let us see in this class. We can take page number 75, consumer rights. So the college you see below contains some news clippings of consumer court verdicts. And why did the people go to the consumer court in these cases? And these verdicts came about because some people persisted and struggled to get justice. In what ways were they denied justice? More importantly, what are the ways in which they can exercise their rights as consumers to get a fair deal from the sellers when they felt they had been denied a just treatment? So in your textbook we can see a lot of cuttings are there, clippings are there from the newspapers, and that is about different verdicts that are given by court on petitions filed by different consumers. So when we feel that our normal rights or our basic rights are denied by the manufacturers or by the shopkeepers or even by government agencies, then in our country we have a legal system that will try to help the just person. So if the mistake is on the part of the dealers, then they will get the punishment and we will be given justice. So many people got justice from the consumer court. So the very fact that consumer courts are there, that is a sign that many people are denied their rights. Many people are being cheated. Many people have a lot of complaints. So those who have complained, they can approach the court and they will be able to get justice through the court. Now let's see about a consumer's position in the market. What are his rights, what are his problems that he faces, and so on. So we participate in the market both as producers and consumers. So some of us are producers and some of us are consumers. Suppose if I produce something, then I take my product to the market, then I act there as a producer. Then I go to another shop because I want to buy something else which I don't have. Then I become a consumer. So in the market, one person can be a producer as well as a consumer. So as producers of goods and services, we would be working in many other sectors discussed earlier, such as agriculture, industry, or services. So as a producer, we may be doing so many things. Sometimes we may be providing services, or we may be running industry, or we may be a farmer. So to sell any of these things, we can go to the market. Then consumers participate in the market when they purchase goods and services that they need. And these are final goods that people or consumers use. So when I go to the market to buy something that I need, then I become a consumer. So I pay money to the shopkeeper and and I buy the thing that I need. Then I become a consumer. So that is what we are going to learn today. What is our position? What are we to do, and so on. So let us see about a real consumer. So in the marketplace, when a person is going to the market to buy things, what is he expected of? Or what are his rights? What can he claim for? All that let us see today. So in the preceding chapters, we discussed the need for rules and regulations or steps that would promote development. So earlier chapter, I hope you remember that we talked about marginalization, globalization, liberalization, all these. So there are a lot of rules are there, and things are supposed to proceed according to the rule, and therefore these could be for the protection of workers in the unorganized sector, or to protect people from the high interest rates charged by the money lenders in the informal sector. So people are there in many areas. Maybe people who are working in the factory or in the farm, they can face a lot of injustice. They may be paid less money as wage, or they may have to work in a very dangerous or hazardous areas. Their life will have no security, or their machines and the factory may not be in the safe zone. So all these problems are there. All that are rights of the workers, and they can claim for that. They can demand for that. That is the duty of the employer to provide all these healthy situations, safety situations for them to work. And maybe people who are working in the informal sector, for example, farmers, they need money for their beginning their harvest, or beginning to begin their cultivation, or they need money to start an industry. So they sometimes go to the informal sector like money lender, village leader, and so on, to borrow money, and they are charged very high rate of interest. So it is a cheat. Banks charging 3 to 4 or 8, 9, 10 percentage, but the money lenders are charging 50 percentage, 60 percentage, and so on. So that is really a very high amount, and therefore they can approach the court. So rules are there to protect the people from being cheated, people from being bluffed. That is why rules are there. Then similarly, rules and regulations are also required for protecting the environment. So we also said about protecting the environment. In the geography we learned about when we are studying about the manufacturing industry, also we learned how we were, it is why we need to protect the environment and so on. So for example, money lenders in the informal sector that you read about in chapter 3 adopt various tricks to bind the borrower. They could make the producers sell the produce to them at a low rate in return for a timely loan, and they could force the small farmer like Swapna to sell her land to pay back the loan, and so on. So we saw many examples in the chapter 3 when we are talking about the money lending. So some of the money lenders are very tricky. They make the people to make so many promises that they will be given loan with a such and such interest, percentage of interest, but after the harvest they should come and sell all their product to this person alone, not to anyone else. So they make so many rules that are binding on these consumers, and their life becomes a terrible thing. And some of them we saw after the harvest was a failure, the crop failed. Therefore, she had to sell even her little piece of land that she had in order to pay back the loan. So the people who are dealing with this informal sector of finance or money lending sources, they are really taking a big risk. So people need to be protected from this kind of risk and from this kind of dangers, and their life should go on smoothly. Therefore, these rules are to be implemented, and the authorities are to make sure that these laws are implemented and the culprits are punished. Then, similarly, many people who work in the unorganized sector have to work at a low wage and accept conditions that are not fair and also often harmful to their health. And to prevent such exploitation, we have talked of rules and regulations for their protection. So there are a lot of employees are there, seasonal laborers, they have no protection at all. They are working in an unorganized sector, therefore they are on their own. What is most important for them is to get some money to look after their family, to protect their family from starvation. Therefore, they are ready to agree to any demand that the employer makes. So sometimes they are forced to work under situations that are very dangerous for their life, or their wages are very low. They are not paid the minimum wage that is fixed by the government, or the situation or the conditions are not very healthy. So all these things are there. People are being exploited. And we have talked about rules and regulations for their protection. Then there are organizations that have struggled for long to ensure that these rules are followed. So there are many organizations are there to help, voluntary organizations and even NGOs that help to protect the people, protect the rights of the consumers and so on. And likewise, rules and regulations are required for the protection of the consumers in the marketplace. So just as there are rules and regulations to protect the employees, there are also rules to protect the people who are in the market, the consumers. That means all of us. We who go to the market to purchase various things, we all need to be protected, and there are certain rules are there. And individual consumers often find themselves in a weak position. And whenever there is a complaint regarding a good or service that had been bought, the sellers try to shift all the responsibility on the buyer. So very often we go to the shop, we buy something, and we are not aware about our rights. We will ask the shopkeeper about it, and he will say something, and we believe that, and we buy and take it home. For example, we buy something, for example, let's say a TV. We buy a TV from the shop, and the shopkeeper says it's very good and so on. After going home, we operate it for some time, then suddenly it gets spoiled. Then we take it back to the shop, and the shopkeeper washes his hand. He will say, it is not our mistake, it is not the mistake of the company, it is your mistake, you did not take care of it properly, and such and such. So they try to put all the blame on the consumer or the customer, and they will not accept the blame. Actually, it must be the problem of the company. Therefore, the company has to take up the responsibility, but they fail to do that. They try to put all the blame, all the responsibility on the customer, because the customer is ignorant maybe, or on himself, by himself, is unable to fight against this injustice and so on. That's why a lot of organizations are coming forward to help us, to guide us, and even to give us proper direction and guidance, so that we will be able to stand for our rights and will be able to get justice. Then their position usually is, if you didn't like what you bought, please go elsewhere. So sometimes shopkeeper will say, if you don't buy like this one, you go and go to somewhere else, no need to come here. Such kind of answers are given by the shopkeeper, as if the seller has no responsibility once a sale is completed. And the consumer movement, as we shall discuss later, is an effort to change this situation. So there is a movement called consumer movement, an organization to help all the consumers, and they are trying to empower the consumers. They are trying to make the consumer understand that after buying the things, they have certain rights. It is not that everything is over. They have certain rights, and the shopkeeper or the company who is responsible for this product, they have the responsibility that in order to make sure that consumer is satisfied completely, or the customer is satisfied completely. So in that process, we alone may not be able to stand up to get our right. We need the help of others, the direction of others. That's why an organization like Consumer Rights or Consumer Society has come up. Then exploitation in the marketplace happens in various ways. And for example, sometimes traders indulge in unfair trade practices such as when shopkeepers weigh less than what they should, or when traders add charges that were not mentioned before, or when adulterated or defective goods are sold. So you are going to the market, and I hope you will be aware about what are the things or what are the malpractices that are being practiced. Sometimes there is duplicate weighing machine. We ask for 1 kg of thing and they will have a duplicate machine or duplicate weighing weight, and it will be less than 1 kg. It may hardly come up to 900 grams, maybe little less than. So the shopkeeper will be making extra profit. Or you go for buying fuel. You buy 1 liter petrol and they will arrange the machine such a way it will be less than 1 liter and you will not know about it. Or you buy milk, it may be little less than the required amount. So there is a cheating or malpractices are there, all these. Then maybe they may be selling things that are adulterated. Adulterated means mixing up with other things, not 100% pure. For example, when you buy let's say rice, when you buy rice from the shop, very often if you cook as it is, what happens? There may be a lot of stones inside. You will break your teeth. You will be biting the stones because they are mixing the rice and the white stones together. That is adulteration. That is called mixing with other impure things. So like that, there are so many items are there in the market. Together with the original thing, they will also mix with some other similar items which cannot be identified very easily. So that is called adulteration. So if you find such kind of situation which are injustice done to the consumers, you can really go to the consumer court and you can get the justice done. You can make them to pay compensation and so on. Then markets do not work in a fair manner when the producers are few and the powerful, whereas consumers purchase in small amounts and are scattered. This happens especially when large companies are producing these goods. And these companies with huge wealth, power and reach can manipulate the markets in various ways. So very often these kind of malpractices or injustices are done by companies, big companies. They have a lot of products are there, and they have a lot of manpower is there, money power is there, and they have huge reach. They are able to reach out to even higher officers and so on. Therefore, they will try to influence them and try to do harm to these people, try to do harm to the consumers by selling wrong things, making wrong policies and so on. Then at times false information is passed on through the media and other sources to attract consumers. For example, a company for years sold powder milk for babies all over the world as the most scientific product, claiming this to be better than mother's milk. And it took years of struggle before the company was forced to accept that it had been making false claims. So there was a company in olden times, earlier, a company that was selling packed milk. So they were claiming this milk is the best milk, even better than mother's milk. So doctors and everybody will say mother's milk is the best milk. There is no other milk which is better than mother's milk for the health of the baby. But this company that was producing milk, they were making a false advertisement. They were telling lies to the people, saying that their milk product is much better or more healthier than mother's milk. So many people must have been believing that promise, that advertisement, and they must have been buying this milk and giving to their babies. That way depriving the baby of its mother's milk. So the people started fighting against it because it's a false advertisement, and therefore it took many years to make that company to apologize, say that they have been telling lies that mother's milk is the best milk. So it took many years, but at the end the truth came out. And similarly, a long battle had to be fought with court cases to make cigarette manufacturing companies accept that their product could cause cancer. Hence, there is a need for rules and regulations to ensure protection for consumers. And another thing is the companies that are producing cigarettes, cigarettes for smoking, it is containing tobacco, and therefore cigarette is no way good for health, and doctors have proved that it can cause cancer. So people who are manufacturing these cigarettes, they bring some famous people and make advertisement with them and try to tell the people that smoking is great. Smoking, all the important people do the smoking, and so many people get deceived. They are not aware about catching cancer, but they think about becoming a famous person by standing in the public and smoking. That way they look at the fame, that hero, their hero in the advertisement, how he is smoking in front of the big crowd and they are all admiring him. So that kind of false advertisement can mislead the people and help them to sell a lot of cigarettes. But on the other hand, what happens? The people are getting affected, the people are getting sick. That is what can happen to the people. So in order to avoid that, the people started fighting about it and made the company aware or declare that smoking cigarette can cause sickness, can cause cancer, and it is injurious to health and so on. So because of that, every cigarette packet or every tobacco packet that you take, it will be written there. Warning is given that cigarette smoking or tobacco consumption is injurious to health. It can cause you cancer, it can kill you. So no company can claim now that smoking cigarette or using any tobacco product is good for health. It is written by themselves that it is injurious to health. It can kill you, it can cause you cancer. So that is all is the result of many people struggling for years to make them to acknowledge all that. Otherwise, for years they have been cheating the consumers, telling the lies to them and trying to attract them to buy their product and so on. But now things have changed, things have become more clear and nobody can cheat the people because the consumers have become more aware about their rights and therefore they try not to believe the false promises and so on. Now let us see about this consumer movement. How did they start? So we are talking about different ways the consumer can be bluffed or cheated. Now let us see how did this consumer movement came up? How did they start? So the consumer movement arose out of dissatisfaction of the consumers as many unfair practices were being indulged by the sellers. So when we are cheated for several times, again and again, then we will become unhappy, we will become unsatisfied, isn't it? So then we will decide, I must react, I must protest against this. That is how the consumer movement began, because people were constantly cheated and bluffed by the sellers and the manufacturers. And there was no legal system available to consumers to protect them from exploitation in the marketplace for a long time. When a consumer was not happy with a particular brand, product or shop, he or she generally avoided buying that brand product or would stop purchasing from that shop and so on. So all the times there was no opportunity for a consumer. Suppose he is going and buying certain things from a shop and he feels that he is cheated, what will he do? He has no right to go and complain. He has no power those days. So he will change the shop. He will, instead of buying from that shop, he will go and buy from another shop. Or he will try to buy from another company product. And so that was the only reaction that the consumer could show towards he saw dissatisfaction that he was facing. Now the things have changed, and it was presumed that it was the responsibility of the consumers to be careful while buying the commodity or service. And it took many years for organizations in India and around the world to create awareness amongst the people. And this has also shifted the responsibility of ensuring quality of goods and services of the sellers. So all the times they said, if you want you buy this one, if you want you check and buy, if you want afterwards don't bring buy. In many shops we can see the shopkeepers are writing and selling, things will not be taken by. So they have no right for that actually. They are supposed to sell good things. If they are selling wrong things or false things, they are supposed to take it back. So on writing on their own, the things will not be taken back. That is not right. So it is the consumer's duty to fight against such kind of injustices. People who are selling wrong things, they have to identify them and they have to take case forward to meet justice and so on. Then in India, the consumer movement as a social force originated with the necessity of protecting and promoting the interests of consumers against unethical and unfair trade practices. So when these kind of injustices were going on, malpractices were going on, the people as consumers, they got fed up and they began to come together, discuss together and decide what shall we do to protect the people in the marketplace. So that is how this movement came up out of unsatisfaction. So people who are doing unethical practice, unethical means immoral practices, that cheating, all that is unethical. And also people who are doing unfair trade practices, people who are increasing the price. When there is a high demand and things are of running short, the shopkeepers generally do, they increase the price. So all that is unethical practices and unfair practices. So rampant food shortages, so people can create food shortage. The shopkeepers, they will hide the food in the godown, the storeroom and say foods are not available. It is almost getting over. Maybe very little. One sack is there. If you want you can buy, but price is high. So people will think, oh, there is no more. If I don't buy now, I will not get it afterwards. So they will pay the high price and they will buy the things. That way they are cheated. Then hoarding is also hiding food. They will hide the food and say it is not there, and afterwards they will sell it. And black marketing, that is selling through black market, not through direct way, selling through backside door, back door. Then adulteration of food, we already said what is adulteration, mixing of other things, similar items in the original food. Then edible oil gave birth to the consumer movement in an organized form in 1960s. So the consumer movement in India was started in 1960s. When people saw all this adulteration, malpractices, all this, they started coming together, joined together and formed this organization. Then till 1970s, consumer organizations were largely engaged in writing articles and holding exhibitions. So it was started in 60s until 70. What were they doing? They were not able to make a strong protest. What they were able to do was only writing in the newspapers and so on, in order to make the people aware that such and such malpractices are taking place, such and such cheatings are taking place and so on. And they formed consumer groups to look into the malpractices in ration shops and overcrowding in the road passenger transport. So some of the issues that they were seeing was the ration shops. We studied in detail about the food security of India, how the government was trying to open PDS, public distribution system, in order to bring the poor people above their poverty line. So but the shopkeepers who are selling the ration items, the food grains and the oil, kerosene, all that, they were not giving to the people. They will say it is over and they will sell it to outside. So such kind of corruptions were going on, and the public transportation system, we can see how crowded, overcrowded it is. There is a limit for the passenger to travel in a bus, but sometimes the double amount is pushed inside. In order to make more profit, they try to push inside maximum number of people, and that is against. So certain level of comforts needs to be provided to the passengers in the public transport. So when this kind of malpractices were being going on, people began to protest against it. People began to write about it and make the people slowly aware about their rights. Then more recently, India witnessed an upsurge in the number of consumer groups. So recently we find that India has found a lot of rising in the number of consumer groups. That means more and more people are coming and forming associations. They are forming consumer groups because there is so much of violence is there, so much of cheating is there. Therefore, more people feel that they need to protest against it. Therefore, they come together, form an organization and try to help the customers, the consumers who are being cheated. So we shall wind it up by that, and we'll begin in the next class again. We will continue with the Consumers International with an example of a consumer group. So thank you for listening. Have a nice day.